Hi, Carolyn. First, here's what happened and Carolyn Talks podcast. So my question is for everyone, but I want to start with Tracy. One of the things that I really love about this show is how realistic it is, and it touches on subjects that Black women in particular face daily. And one of them is the discussion on uterine fibroids and uterine conditions. And this is something that I personally have experienced. I've had fibroids, I've had a myomectomy, I've had surgeries to remove them, and there is no Black woman that I know in my life who is above the age of 30 that does not have fibroids. And I want to ask you about including this in the discussion because I've never seen it discussed in any TV show or film that centers Black women. So I wanted to ask you, Tracy, about including this in the storyline, and then for the cast about this, having this discussion while you're reading the scripts and then during rehearsal and filming. And for Tyler, I want your perspective as a man because my brother is 10 years older, so he's familiar with things, but we don't get it. We don't get the perspective of men in women's lives because we have the things like PCOS and endometriosis that do affect Black women a lot, and it does affect, I think, the relationships between Black women and men. So I want your perspective on that as well from being from being involved in the show.
And I just want to say, go ahead, Barbados.
Hey. Love the accent. I was in the writer's room. It kind of came up organically. And one of the Black women writers in the room actually was dealing with that. And then that kind of sparked a very honest, vulnerable discussion of all of the stuff that we had been silently dealing with and just showing up with a brave face to work. And I think what was going on was that, and I get it, because it's like, it's work and it's professional. So people just feel like they can't really be open and honest about what they're dealing with. And then we kind of started tearing up when we realized that there was just personal struggles galore in this room. And the majority of the women in the room were Black women. And so we just bonded over the fact that, like, wow, we're not allowed to cry. We're not allowed to share these stories. We're not allowed to be vulnerable. We're not allowed to talk about, some of the things that we're dealing with privately. And I think like this idea of a strong Black woman or a fierce, or fearless Black woman, I get it. And I think that's great. And I think that the reason behind that was well-intentioned, but what it also did was it denied us the permission to be weak and vulnerable at times. And so that's where the episode kind of came from, was all of us just admitting that. And with fibroids in particular, I wanted to highlight it because, like you said, it's an actual issue that affects Black women. And a lot of times when Black women go to doctors to get diagnosed or medicated or help for it, they're either misdiagnosed or sent away or dismissed in a way that other women are not. And so that was the reason why we kind of explored that with Ty, because in the actual writer's room, it came out that it took several doctors to figure out what was actually the problem. And, and then when the solution was presented, it was, oh, well, then maybe you just don't need kids. And it was just a harsh, discussion instead of a thoughtful, nuanced, way into it that I think a lot of white women are afforded. So that was kind of the genesis of that episode and that particular discussion.
Reading that part of the script, it definitely was like a moment. Just because, in undergrad, I studied African-American studies, right? So there was a lot of stuff about Black women who are forced to get hysterectomies or who don't know that they're getting them as children. And there's this history here in America of trying to not only take control of the Black woman's body, but stop the Black woman's ability to reproduce. And our wombs are so powerful. And so it makes sense for white supremacy, right? Not that it makes sense, but for white supremacy to prevail, that they would try to go in a Black woman and silence her body in that way. I have an aunt who has fibroids, who struggles to this day. And it's interesting having conversations with her because it feels like, and she also had a hysterectomy. She also has her ovaries taken, all of these things that are being done to her body. And it's almost like constantly, I mean, think about how intimate it is to even like use the restroom with somebody, right? But imagine having different people exploring your body, telling you, oh no, that doctor was wrong. We're gonna do this, but that doctor already took this out of my body. And so now you're gonna do this. Oh no, and so continuing to get second opinions from the same kinds of people who don't care about the longevity of Black womanhood in America to begin with. I also have a friend, because you mentioned endometriosis, who had to move back here from LA because it is so under researched, because it doesn't affect men. Or for what we know right now, it doesn't affect men or male at birth, people who were born male. And so it is sometimes underreported, sometimes it's misdiagnosed as other things, and it's not researched enough. And so she had experiences in LA where it got so much worse because people were almost experimenting on her. And if we know from slavery time, like Black women were experimented on. That's how we have modern day gynecology and like brain surgeons and stuff like that. It's like it was explored on Black babies. And so just to have this conversation in the room on a queer masculine performing body, with the assumptions that come with that, I'm so excited for the conversations in the forums on that when this show comes out.
Well, I think from my perspective, you know, it's unique because on one hand, you know, I don't experience this, you know, but in my life, I've had so many family members, friends, people that I know. I've had so many Black women talk to me about feeling dismissed and feeling silenced. And, you know, and like where I come into play is like, you know, and Jerry had talked about it, about feeling that protective energy. Because when it comes to physical protection, of course, I'm going to be there. Like one place, I guess, that's a different contrast to that shows like my juxtaposition is my ability to like protect in a different way, to listen, to be tender enough, to be open, and you know, just be there with them as they go through this, because like it just blows my mind that one of the through lines of everything that they've been telling me is everything that y'all have been saying. Like they're going to doctor after doctor and people are just continuing to dismiss them, and they feel like they're voiceless. And I just feel like Tracy did such a good job of just not only highlighting that specifically, but just the full juxtaposition of who we are as people, but who y'all are specifically as Black women. It's not just you know, because when we see it on TV or you see it on the news, it's like this, like strong, sassy type of like, you know, one note. And it's so much deeper than that. You know what I mean? Of course, there's strength, but there's vulnerability too. There's tenderness to go along with that strength. And I just feel like, you know, I'm continuing to learn more and more about it, even through the work that we're doing on the show. So I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I just feel like it was a very, I just feel like it was an important aspect to involve into the storyline.
For the other ladies, anything to add?
I mean, I think Jerry said it all, you know, and I think, and, you know, again, just going back to the fact that Tracy and the writer's room took the time to just make this a part of it and to tackle it. And then, as Jerry said, with all the innuendos that come with that, specifically, I think that it is going to be a conversation piece that frees a lot of people, just like it did in the writer's room.
Yes.
To say, yeah, I am dealing with this. I am struggling with this. I feel alone. I know other people are going through it, but I didn't realize how close, in essence, that a lot of times when you feel alone, you don't realize that the people that you need are really that close to you, that are experiencing the same things, because you don't have those conversations. So hopefully it opens the forum, and I believe that it will, to just not be alone in it, and to be supported and loved and helped, you know, as Tyler said, through it.
Again, so my question is for Sonequa, Grace, and you, Tracy. So before we talked about female, like, you know, uterine conditions and and you spoke about sharing the stories in the writer's room. So there's another aspect of the show that I really connected to. So as I mentioned, I have fibroids, but I'm also Bayesian. And there's a particular scene that takes place between Angie and Quinn that I was like, yes, finally someone says it. because when it comes to North American productions, when they're doing a West Indian accent, whether the person's supposed to be Jamaican, Trinidadian, or Vincentian or whatever, they always do this weird approximation of a Jamaican accent. And Quinn addresses Angie about it when she starts imitating a Jamaican accent. And I was so happy that she actually called it out, because she talks about it being a form of cultural appropriation, and it's about respect throughout the diaspora. And one thing about female friendships is we can show love, like talking about, like offering sympathy and encouragement during like trying times, like with Ty's character. But we also love to be able to call out the people that we love when they do something that we think is offensive or that we don't like. So can you just, for Saniqua and Grace, can you talk about that scene in particular? Because I think it's something that needs to be addressed in Hollywood in particular, where I like to say every West Indian is not Jamaican and everybody knows sound the same.
Yes.
True.
Yes. And gosh, there's so many things I want to say about this, and I'll try to see if I can keep it concise. But I feel like because you don't see a lot of Caribbean American cultural things that are, you know, on the television, on film, that whenever we do see little aspects, we get excited. So even if it's not like exactly right, we're like, oh, we don't care. We just want to, you know, we're small countries. We want to hear it. But the truth of the matter is that when you're talking about New York, when you talk about the world, when you're even talking about Harlem, there is such a cultural dense part of Harlem, of New York, that is Caribbean and is legitimately Caribbean. And what I love about Tracy is that when I was cast as Quinn, Tracy pulled me aside and she was like, listen, I really want to lean on your Caribbean American heritage. She's like, I would love to make your parents Caribbean. And I was like, say what? And so doing that to just not bring not only an authentic lane to this whole dynamic, but also to honor that saturated part of New York that does have a very strong Caribbean influence was really important to Tracy. So we talked about it and she was like, do you have a Caribbean country that you'd like to, you know? And I said, well, you know, I'd love to honor, you know, the Cayman roots. So I would love to have someone that's Caymanian. She was like, okay. And so we talked about a couple of different countries, and then Tracy tried her best to find who she could find that would be able to do a Caribbean accent or who could be Caribbean. And so we eventually landed on Jasmine Guy being an uptown Jamaican as mom. And then Tracy was like, and I would love for your dad to be Caymanian. Now he has yet to make an appearance. He will one day, but for the first season, we do get to see just an aspect of that cultural representation, which I do love. And so even when we're chatting about it, you know, and Tracy and I had a few conversations about how Quinn would say it, what that would look like, you know, all those things. But I do think that it was really important for us to be able to differentiate just the different cultural aspects of what it means to be Black, because there are many different cultural aspects of Blackness that I think that when we address that, then we really include the full diversity and the full spectrum of what it means to be Black.
Mm-hmm. And Saniqua?
I think so much what I love about this show is that it's giving people the opportunity who would be supporting roles in other shows to have an authentic, fully layered, multi-dimensional experience. And even in, like, as a Black woman, a curvy woman, there's so many times where even in a Black production, I've only been like the minor sassy best friend. And so, and it's a part of a way of mocking and appropriating even our own bodies, our own culture. And so that's what I loved so much about that scene in particular, which actually ended up being like kind of an add-on in the moment, or like the day of, having a moment that really explained that it's not okay. Yes, you are Black, but what you are doing is mocking this experience. You're not allowing this, you're not seeing Jamaican people or Caribbean people as a people. You're seeing it as something
to commoditize.
Exactly, to benefit you right now in this moment. And I think it's just so brilliant, period, about this show is just that everyone, people that we haven't seen before, have a voice. They have multi-layers. They have dreams and goals that they are aspiring to reach. And I'm just excited for the level of representation that people will see from it.
I love that. It's almost like taking the label of what you think something is and adding the flesh, adding the tissue, adding the ligaments, adding the heartbeat to these characters, because they do reflect true human lives.
Yeah.
No, great. Thank you so much, because I mentioned the fibers, but also just the West Indian and the Caribbean aspect, and just like being able to see Black women who look like me in all different shades and shapes on TV, I think this show is like very important because when we talk about representation, we have to remember it's not just white versus black or white versus other people of color. It's about representation within our culture as well. And you guys
Yes.
really do a fantastic job getting a holistic look at what representation actually really means.
Yes.
Yes.
Diversity inside the diversity.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Amen. Thank you so much.